The first job I had to do on the Z-axis was to blow up the ways and check out that they were flat and weren't binding, and instantly found that they weren't very good. One surface was okay, which was the one that had the boss holding the ball screw. I also had to machine the oil ways. On the Z-axis I used a plain square-ended mill, but it would have been better in retrospect to have used a ball-ended mill as I did on the rest of the X and the Y. This is the Z-axis ball nut with the oiler plugged in. I just have the tube to put on. I've got it pointing down, so hopefully that will manage to go up and down without getting tangled on the mechanism for this. I may well put a weight at the bottom of where this loops round just to make sure it always stays at the bottom. And that's the ball nut machining, nothing very much to see. I had a double ball nut on this particular one. I did the one that I had on the other axis. I had one ball nut like this, but it was very stiff and I couldn't use it. But this one seems okay. I'm now in a position to start rebuilding everything, first job is to put the Z-axis in, and this starts off by having to lowering this down, which enables you to fit the Z-axis in through the gap here and then feed it back up here, and then you have to insert the bolt through here to get hold of the Z-axis mount, which is just simply a reproduction of the original mount, exactly the same principle as this, but instead of having a threaded hole through there, there's a hole that takes the ball screw. Very simple. And having done a little bit of scraping and tidying up of the ways here, this is very free running. And the thing you need to be absolutely certain of is that this is in the middle of this hole, so that it runs up and down nice and smoothly when it's put together. And this screw through the middle here needs to be tightened really quite hard. It might have a tendency to undo itself otherwise. So the best way to do that is I made up the mount here, so the mount has got a recess, a boss on the back, and these are angular contact bearings with the thin side either side so that they push up against the face of the angular contact as they're tightened up. And there's no, the inside of this is just a flange and there's nothing in the middle at all. You put those in there, and what you can do then is make sure that the axis will go up and down freely and nicely centered. So I haven't put any screws in yet, so but that's more or less ready. The next thing is it needs a nut, and there's a grub screw in the side of the nut. I made the nut myself because I couldn't find one online, and none of them came with it didn't come with this, with the ball screws, which was a bit irritating. I mean, everybody's going to need the nuts, they should have come with it really. Now, to tighten this up, If you move this up to near the top here, that's quite convenient because you can get at everything. You just put a bit of protection around mole grips. Use some mole grips. That's that. And just tighten this up. And you need to make sure that this is tight but not too tight. There mustn't be any movement in any direction, which there isn't, and yet it should still be able to spin reasonably freely, which it can. So I can now take that off there, and then drop this down. And that's gone into its little recess at the top, so it's nicely centred. And I need to just tighten up the little grub screw. And then on top of this, there's the connector. So that's that part of the mount done. I've fitted the Lovejoy coupler, which is just held in with screws on the side here. And it's probably easiest with my system of 2 holes here to align the screws so that when you want to tighten up the second one, you've actually got everything set up so it's aligned. And this has got a hole here that fits into the boss on here, so that locks in. And you can see I've made most of this on the lathe rather than on the mill. And then this plate has got a recess for this, so that locks it into that position. And the screws go in there. And the final thing to mount then is the stepper motor, and I've got closed root NEMA 34 stepper motors, and this one is an absolutely massive beast. I won't put it on now, but there's 4 screws around there. And then when I want to tighten up the grub screw, sorry, the screw that secures the coupling, I can see it through here. And I deliberately did it so when I've got this in situ in the final position it's going to be, and I can get at those 2 holes at the side. And I have actually made this so that when you take this off, you could at a pinch take the coupling out with on the end of the spindle still, but best not to, I think. So that's the whole of the assembly finished, and the only other thing that I did earlier is putting in the gas strut. Right, now the next thing to do is to add the top of the main part body of the mill head. Now this is tricky. You have to sort of stand over it and hold it up while you fiddle the screws and nuts together, and this will take a little while, and don't expect me to get it first time off. And it's a heavy thing, but it when it's broken down like this, it's actually liftable by one person. Put it on sideways. Ah, got it. That was obviously an easier way to do it. Looks a bit precarious, but it is actually secured reasonably well. Once you've got one nut done up, it holds it in place quite well. It sits on a spigot that's in the back of it there. Right, that's proof that somebody in their 70s can put one of these on their own, single-handedly. Now the head's going to need trimming when I put it all back together again. But there we are, we're getting some progress here. Oh, actually I can see it's slightly off. I can do better than that from the moment to put it together. To get it roughly correctly orientated, I use my little digital inclinometer. Well, it was. Anyway, it's never going to be perfect, and it needs doing properly by tramming, but at least that will start off reasonably close to where it should be. Yeah, it's pretty close. Now the next job I'm going to do is to put the spindle in. That's just worth pointing out. Good idea to keep some wood underneath the bottom there in case you have a mishap and things drop onto the table. That's the one thing you do not want. Right, the spindle can be a little bit fiddly to put on. As I don't know when I'm taking this apart next, I'm just putting a bit of oil over the spindle just to make sure it doesn't go rusty. Make it slightly easier to put in. There we go. That's clamped in with this clamp, and it is necessary to keep the spindle from dropping, so especially when you're putting everything together. Let's check that everything runs freely, which it does, and then the next thing to do is to pop the cover on the top with the bearing and check that that's free playing. There we go. And then there's two little dowels which are tapered that accurately locate the top. And then there's the 4 bolts that secure that in. Don't remember exactly where these all go now. There's 2 there. And 2 there. These were incredibly tightly done up at the factory, these ones, but struggle to get them undone. They also have an impact wrench or something. And then these 2 bars go on the side here. rest of the head. Now there's the motor to mount on, and the belt, and the rest of the power drawbar assembly.